Over 99% of the figures follow a rule in which the black was applied first, followed by the red, and then the yellow, and then the white.
You cannot read this going from left to right, or right to left, or top to bottom, or whatever. You have to see it more in a global form.
Originally, paintings were an integral part of the building for which they were designed. Together, they make up the building's memory.
The sun comes in from the ocular window above the main door and one of the windows of the dome. And so you have these two illuminations right around 6:30 every August 15th. How did they figure out to build a building so that that would happen? Nobody seems to know.
The images on the wall are records of the building's interior life. Behind its image is God. Before it, believers close their eyes. They do not need to go on looking at it. They know that it marks the place of meaning.
All these are natural pigments that if you left them laying on the ground, they would retain their color for an eternity. And if you put them on the rock, it's going to stain the rock rust color, and it'll last for an eternity.
What we learned was this is a single composition, and nothing about it is arbitrary or random. Everything carries meaning, including the order in which the paint was applied.
It's mythical, and that's the one that I believe we're going to have a lot of trouble with, because I don't know if modern man can understand the myths of the people that were painting those pictographs.
All the paintings of the tradition used the convention of perspective, which is unique to European art. Now, perspective centers everything on the eye of the beholder. It is like a beam from a lighthouse, only instead of light traveling outwards, appearances travel in. And our tradition of art called those appearances reality.
Which of the trees are, quote, sacred versus the ones that are not? Is it clear that those are ones that do or don't have sacred significance?
So it's incorrect to think about which tree is sacred. That's why the spiritual ecology, it's the ability to nest there.
So the blue hole is now dry. Why is it dry?
The water goes somewhere else and then to the golf courses.
So, man.
That portion of the river is identical to a constellation of stars in the sky called Eridanus. It's the combination of a terrestrial river and a celestial river. It's one of the places we've discovered on a 2,000-year-old piece of rock art called the White Shaman.
Dark matter. Dark matter.
We're basically looking at it from, I guess, this perspective right here. At the moment, all of the models do not produce any such extremely large structures. It kind of suggests that there is something wrong with our current physical model of the universe.
The trees are here to tell us of what's going on in the skies when you can't see it. These trees are telling us that it is real.
The process of seeing paintings or seeing anything else is less spontaneous and natural than we tend to believe. A large part of seeing depends upon habit and convention.
Most of this is a painting that is produced under the influence of drug.
The most difficult style for me is the Pecos River style. It's rather enigmatic, and it really gives you very little concrete about what the people were doing.
It has been said that we did not have a written language, and we lost it for a lot of times. But when I come here, I feel, that it's alive, that it's still telling us a lot of things.
The most important thing about paintings themselves is that their images are silent, still. With the invention of the camera, everything changed.
And here we are very close to the birth of cinema, obviously. The question was still, how do you bring enough light actually onto the screen? And so Ludomir had the idea to spray water onto the screen. And that apparently was so successful that he decided on the spot, we're going to do this every night.
In a film sequence, the details have to be selected and rearranged into a narrative which depends on unfolding time. In paintings, there is no unfolding time.
Remember, black painted before red, this figure has 12 black dots in its body. In the Aztec story, there's a battle that takes place between the Lord of Dawn, Venus, who is associated with the deer, and the sun. Guess who is ruler of the 12th day? The Lord of Dawn.
Here is that sunrise mentioned in the rock art. My family, we've been going there for years now, celebrating that sunrise, that moment in time. The difference between the color black and the color red identifies moments in time from darkness to sunrise.
What we have here in the Lower Pecos is the archaic library of North America. They hold information about philosophy, botany, astronomy, mythology.
At the beginning of the tradition of oil painting, the emphasis on the real being solid was part of a scientific attitude.
And the hand goes up. 400 million. And the piece is sold.
But the emphasis on the real being solid, on being what you could put your hands on, became equally closely connected with a sense of ownership.
When you see things like these objects up here that have been painted, to us those are words speaking to us, telling us about life and how we should live our lives. You had to teach each other how to live in this type of environment so we can be stronger.
They're here as our teachers. They're here as our relatives. Our buffalo is a way for us to reconnect with each other.
The buffalo followed the Oglala Aquifer, which travels all the way from north to south. As part of the Buffalo Nation, Lipan Apache, we also came down following the buffalo into Texas.
A couple of years ago, I was invited out to West Texas to look at the White Shaman painting, and I noticed that looks like springs to me. You see all the bursting color to the right of the black dots? That's a rainbow that's being created over the waters. This is the part of the story where our ancestors were born from these springs.
The story this mural tells is the story about the birth of the sun and the creation of time. When they are reenacting this, they literally go back into primordial time. And they believe that if they don't do it, the world will cease to exist.
Los miembros de este grupo dedicado a darle vida al ritual de sus ancestros viven la creencia de que cada relieve del terreno, cada montaña, cada río, no es solamente el macizo de roca o la corriente que le revelan sus ojos, sino la morada de un Dios. Los caminos son huellas que conducen al encuentro con alguna manifestación de lo sagrado.
Once a year at winter solstice at midnight, the San Antonio River and the constellation of Eridanus meet end to end at the Gulf of Mexico, all the way up to the constellation of Orion, quote, where our ancestors dwell.
Perhaps storytelling began with the night sky, tracing an imaginary line between a cluster of stars, and then the stars threaded on that line were like characters and events threaded on a narrative.
Built in the 1730s at the direction of the Spanish missionaries, the influence of the indigenous people is evident by ties to celestial events.
We are inside Mission Concepcion, and this is the Assumption of Mary, the painting, and you can see she's standing on what appears to be an annular eclipse.
Meantime, Father David Garcia, who served as pastor of the church, says it's likely just a moon.
On the winter solstice sunset, watch what happens. The sun moves up the panel until it gets to this location. And right at that point, the head is severed. It's almost like they drew this during the sunset.
This day today is the day that they built the church so that two beams of light would come in and illuminate parts of the church that they wanted to show to the indigenous peoples.
One of our elders says that our ancestors in the beginning were given all of the knowledge, all of the instructions to survive and thrive. And those instructions have been passed down to us. Many of us are colonized and have forgotten those instructions, but we're trying very much to reclaim those.
Our creation story is documented in the White Shaman panel, and we noticed that all the elements of our instructions to our ceremony were also on the panel, and they were related to our creation. So then we said, okay, well then our ceremony is a recreation of our creation.
There is a prophecy amongst Native Americans that the returning of the buffalo will also be the returning of our strength as Native people throughout Turtle Island.
This is the first time in hundreds of years that Lipan-Apache and Southern Plains bison have been right here on this land.
We can't forget about this. This is how we all got here. Wherever we came from in the world, some words were left to get us here today.
The moment that they were applied to the wall, they were vivified, they were given life. And those characters that we see are actively involved in the creation and maintenance of the cosmos still today. They are still seeing, they are still speaking, they are still interacting.
It's all there, it's all there. And if you do it correctly, if you pass it on through the story, and if you're standing there the moment the event takes place, and you teach people how to pass it on to the next generation, generations and generations and generations down the road are going to enjoy the cosmos come alive the way our ancestors promised it to us.